Do you guys want to hear a scary story? This story actually was one of the only stories or experiences, I guess I should say, that happened to me where I really did question if I was going crazy. The story is going to make you very scared to drive at night. I'm just forewarning you. So I was babysitting the night that this happened, but ironically enough, if you follow my stories, nothing weird happened in the house that night. It was a good, normal night. I was like 16, 17 at the time. I left at like 9 p.m. I want to say. I'm feeling good. Like, spirits are high because nothing scary happened to me in the house and things terrifying happened all the time there. So I say goodbye and I leave, right? And as I'm driving home, I get this feeling that someone is watching me or someone's like behind me. I remember like even laughing at myself because it wasn't exactly a fear. It's hard to describe, but it was more so a feeling of just, I feel like I'm not by myself. Just that feeling you get when you feel like someone else is in the room. So I'm like checking my rearview mirror, don't see anything. I remember I get home, I was living with a friend at the time, pull into her driveway, get the keys out of my car, go inside, and wraps. Almost positive I went to bed. That should have been the end of it, right? No, of course not. So the next morning, I remember it was like a Saturday or a Sunday because I didn't have school. So my friend I was living with at the time was like, let's go clean our cars out, let's vacuum them out. And I was like, okay, yeah, for sure. So we get this little vacuum, we're like pushing it out into the driveway, and we start like opening all of our doors up, cleaning our cars. This is when I noticed something weird. As I open my driver's door, my seat is pushed like all the way back. Like someone that was a lot taller than me had been driving, which I'm 5'4" now, I think. I'm 5'3", 5'4", something like that. My point is, I could not drive like with that seat that far away. And I remember I turned to her and I was like, did you get in my car last night? She was like, no. And I realized my car had been locked. Like, it didn't make any sense. And my friend also was like the same height as me. So, I'm like, maybe I bumped the lever or something, right? This is the part where it gets really spooky. Then I look in the back seat and, cleaning our cars, and there's a shoe mark on, like, behind the driver's seat. But here's where I remember I got so creeped out. It wasn't like a covered in mud. It was just an outline of like the sole of a shoe. And again, no one had been in my car. And at the time, I was real obsessed with my car and keeping it clean. So I looked for stuff like that. And it was a very noticeable footprint. What scared the life out of me is it was facing the driver's seat. Almost like someone was crouched down on the floor behind the driver's seat. Like, it wasn't the way a passenger's foot would have been sitting. It was so distinctly right behind my driver's seat. Like someone had been sitting back there and kneeling forward. Nothing was missing, and then I just started thinking maybe I'm hallucinating again, right? Then I find in between the cushion, like the back seat cushion and the door, kind of like where it meets the door. I'm so bad at explaining things, but you get me. There's a piece of ribbon back there. And I remember thinking, what the is going on? Like, this is so bizarre because the girls I babysat for, the family I was working for, they didn't wear ribbons. I didn't wear ribbons. My friends didn't wear ribbons. This is 2014. We're in high school. 2013, maybe, somewhere in there. That was not a trend. And I just knew I'd never seen it before. And it looked like an old, dated, worn piece of ribbon that was maybe like this big. Then I really could not stop feeling so insane. And like, I remember how I felt like someone was in the car with me that drive home at night. And anyways, I'm just trying to get it out of my head, and I go to babysit 1 or 2 days later for the family again. I don't remember if it was 1 or 2 days, something like that. And the mom, I remember, said something interesting to me. She's like, yeah, I had called you to see if you were all right because you sat in our driveway for a while before you left. And I'm like, I know for a fact, like I always did, I got in my car and I left immediately. I didn't like hanging around, staying there. I wouldn't even like check my phone before I started driving. I would just drive home. Like, I wouldn't even turn the music on. I would just get away from the house. I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, you were sitting, when you got in the car, you were sitting there for like 10 minutes. And I tried to call you and it went straight to voicemail. I never had a missed call from her. And she was like, I almost came outside, but then you finally like reversed and you left. Apparently, I had been sitting out there in my car, according to her, and even the oldest girl that I babysat for, like, she's old enough to know, stuff going on. She also was, like, seeing me in the driveway. She's like, yeah, like, Riley, we thought you were going to come back inside. It was just weird. So, whenever Mom leaves, I'm babysitting. Night starts rolling, right? And Luna, the oldest daughter, like 2 girls, I remember she said, so who was with you? Like, Riley, like, who went home with you? I'm like, what, baby? Like, no one came home with me. She said, yeah, me and mommy were wondering what you were doing outside. I saw someone with you. Your friend was in the car. I said, baby, where'd you see someone in the car? She said, right behind you. And that night when everything happened and I got home to my friend's house where I was living, I remember, like, I got out of my car and I thought I heard, like, a noise. And I started overthinking it days later after all this happened. And I realized it sounded like a car door shutting, like, quietly. So someone was in the car with me. Did they ever get out? Was anyone actually in the car with me? Was it some spirit from their house? Like, this is one of the experiences I remember I had where I thought I'm losing my mind because it was real. Like, there was a piece of ribbon and footprints in my seat moved. I like to think there was just a little spirit hitching a ride with me and this was not a real person. I think the weirdest thing for me when I look back on this, and I'm almost positive it's paranormal, you do this and try and question yourself when things like this happen to you. But when I look back, the feeling of just like not being alone, I remember it was just so, it's so hard to describe. But that experience definitely made me terrified to look in my back seat for a while when I was driving and made me check the car also entirely before I got in it. It's actually not the only story I have. I have a few of seeing things and people in my car that aren't always there, but that's all for now. Bye.
So I've told this story on my page before and it went kind of viral, but there are some new followers on here that haven't heard the story, I don't think yet, so I'm gonna retell it. And we've been talking about Appalachia anyway, so I'm gonna tell you about the first time that I ever took my Brazilian husband on the Appalachian Trail to go camping. So like I said, he's Brazilian, so he had never experienced the forests of America, and he just so happened to move to a part of America where we have very dense and scary forest lands. But I'm an avid hiker and I always have been. I love the forest. And everybody around here loves the forest. And if you don't, you're kind of like the off one, you know? So yeah, okay, we get on the AT, right? We're going. Everything is totally fine. We hike out and we find this really beautiful spot. We didn't want to camp anywhere near like, you know, those shacks that you were able to. We kind of wanted to find our own little secluded spot, so we ventured out a little bit. The hike there was amazing. The forest was so loud. We were talking. We had some nice conversations with some people on the earlier portions of the trail before we got to the more secluded areas. And then we found our camp spot, which was beautiful. And it was around the evening time at the time we found the campsite, so we pitched our tent and everything, and we got everything all situated and set up. And while we were standing there looking at what we had just built, I noticed that the forest got really quiet. Like all of the animals ceased to exist at the moment. And if you know anything about the woods, I always say this, the woods going quiet is never a good sign. It usually means there's a predator around and the animals are scared, they're trying to hide. So I look over at my husband to see if he's picking up what the forest is putting down, and it seems like he is, but he doesn't want to show it really. He's not the type that scares very easily, so he wasn't really put off by this. He just felt like that's kind of weird, you know? So whatever, we made our dinner that night and we ate our food, and then we got into our tent and went to sleep after a little while hanging around the fire and stuff. So we go to sleep, and I want to say it's around midnight or like 1 a.m. or something around that time of the morning. We started to hear footsteps outside of our tent. And if you're a camper, you know that usually footsteps outside of your tent is just animals or something like that, and you just pray and hope that it's not one that's gonna rip into your tent. But it's a very distinguishable sound when it's walking on 4 feet versus 2. Like, we definitely heard bipedal walking around the campsite. So I shoot up and I wake up my husband and I'm like, yo, are you hearing this? He was already awake, but he was laying there, and when I shot up and like grabbed him, he also sat up. And so we're sitting there listening, and we're still hearing the walking, and we're also hearing like this low guttural growl. And it's not like from an animal or anything like that. Like, it's none that I've ever heard before. So I start panicking. I'm like hyperventilating, clutching onto my husband, and he's the brave one, so he wants to be protective. So he unzips the fucking tent, peeks his head out, even though I'm like protesting. I'm like trying to pull his arm back, and he's like, get off of me, I'm gonna check. So he unzips the tent a little bit and he pokes his head out and shines the flashlight, and his hand tightens around my arm. Like his grip, he grabs me hard, and he's like, don't move, don't look, do not move. He didn't say it like very loud. He was like whispering, like in a really stern voice, like, do not make a sound, do not move. I don't know, it's just something in me that whenever somebody tells me not to do something, I want to do it more. So, you know, I got up and I went to look. Of course I did. And what I saw I literally have not gone camping on the AT since this moment. This is the last time I've gone to the AT. So I peeked my head out, and what I saw, the first thing that I saw were like the two glowing eyes that were abnormally high up. Like it looked like the reflection of animal eyes, but just way fucking taller than any animal I've ever seen in my goddamn life. And its body was really long and slender and like this grayish sickly color. Its arms were gangly and way too long for its body. And I just remember it had this piercing stare that fucking burned into my soul, dude. It physically hurt to look at this thing. So we're sitting there staring at this thing, like basically having a staring contest, a standoff with this thing. And all of a sudden it gets down, it like crouches down and then skitters off into the forest faster like than the speed of light almost. I don't even know how to explain how fast it went. It was just there and it wasn't. It was like a poof. Shit was gone. But yeah, on my last video, some people were like, yeah, why didn't you like run away from that? Or like, why didn't you like go anywhere? Bro, the first rule of Appalachia is if you see something, no you didn't. And if something sees you, you better not run away. You just back away slowly. Things in those woods love a good chase. They want you to run. But yeah, we ended up falling asleep in our tent somehow, but we left first thing in the morning. Like as soon as the light cracked in the fucking sky, we were gone. We had our shit packed. We were like, yep, this weekend trip is no longer gonna be a full weekend trip. We're fucking out of here. But honestly, that's not the first time that I've ever been on the Appalachian Trail. That's the last time that I've been on the Appalachian Trail. I've had other experiences. One time I went camping with my cousin, and I've told that story on here too already, but if you don't want to search for it, I'm happy to tell it again. Just let me know. And also, if you're gonna go out in the woods, please be safe. No matter how much you respect it, it does not respect you back. And they're old as shit. So like, you're foolish to believe that nothing exists beyond what we claim to know. You know what I mean?
This is one of those stories that like, we're in for a ride. I am back with another spooky story. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story Naya. Naya said that she met her ex when he was 21. She thought that he was the love of his life, but Naya says looking back, she thinks she actually fell in love with the version of him that she created in her head because the real him was spineless. Naya says that his family hated her from day one. His mother would never look at her in the eye. She would hug everybody else at family gatherings except for her. She remembers one time she sat down, and when she got up, why the mother went and wiped the chair afterwards. She would tell him in front of her that she wasn't the kind of woman meant for their family. Again, in front of Naya. Naya at first thought that maybe the mom was just like one of those controlling boy moms. It wasn't just her because his sister would also join in on the joust. Sister would constantly tell Naya that she wasn't actually his type, just be very rude to her in front of him, and he would never say anything. It was very obvious that their family was trying to break them up, made Naya fight for her relationship a little bit harder. Now this guy is Nigerian, so he's the breadwinner of that family. So she understood why the family acted like that toward her. Well, Naya started going through some things, but she didn't notice the pattern until later. Every time they were intimate, she would get sick. And she's talking immediate yeast infection, horrible odor that no doctor could even explain. She was constantly at the gynecologist. She got tested for BV, STI, diabetes, and everything came out negative. But she was reeking. Naya would take medication to feel better, but then they get together again and it would start all over. She said things got so bad she was embarrassed to even leave the house. Meanwhile, dude was perfectly fine. And Naya at this point is blaming herself. Changing soaps, changing underwear, buying probiotics, spending hundreds on vitamins, and nothing worked. His mother, on the other hand, randomly make these comments. She would say things like, some women just aren't spiritually clean enough to carry a man's blessings. What do you mean by that? One day, Naya randomly has this dream of this woman telling her, leave him. With her health declining, she decided to go see her aunt. Now, her aunt also does voodoo. But when she went to her aunt, the aunt told her immediately that it was the boy's mother and sister, and that they were actually doing witchcraft on Naya. The aunt gave her a spiritual bath, and at this point, she stopped sleeping at his house. Within 2 weeks of doing that, her infection started clearing up, the smell was clearing up, things were good. But unfortunately, she started seeing him again. Got intimate again, and everything came back. Naya knew this isn't right. Now, Naya says this, not me, mind you. She says, but this is where she became the clown. Instead of leaving, she fought harder for him, because she thought that love was supposed to survive everything. A few months later, she found out why his mother wanted her gone so badly. The whole time, dude had another girlfriend. It wasn't some random hookup either, an entire relationship. Apparently, she'd been around longer than Naya, and the girl was pregnant. The whole family knew about this. Naya felt like the only idiot walking around defending him. You should never defend a man. So when Naya confronted him about the other girl, he said, I was gonna tell you eventually. At that point, Naya wasn't even heartbroken anymore. She was miles past that. She was pissed. She was angry. Feeling like people were making a fool out of her. Feeling like she wasted all this time. Feeling like she wasn't chosen. And Naya at this point wanted revenge. Not on him, but on her. The side chick. But wasn't she around longer than you? Because in Naya's mind, the side chick, she won. She got the family, she got the baby, got the ring they promised was hers. Naya just felt like she didn't deserve all of that and she shouldn't have it all. So she performed the ritual to close her womb. She winded up having a miscarriage and she will never be able to conceive again. And she says she's actually not done with his girlfriend. She says she will not stop until that relationship is completely broken up. And when she's done with the girlfriend, she's coming for the sister and then the mother. And then hopefully she can finally have her man back with no distractions. These are the stories that y'all submit to me. For a man. Anyway, thank you so much for submitting your spooky story. If you have a spooky story that you want me to tell, feel free to submit it to me right here via DM. I see at the end of all my videos, I love you, my abducted humans. I'm your favorite Haitian homegirl.
Let's talk about the Jersey Devil and share a listener submitted experience about the time that he believes he slipped through the fabric of reality and traveled back to the moment that the Jersey Devil was born in 1735. This is an absolutely wild story sent in by someone named Antonio, but before I get into his story, I'm going to share a little bit of background about the Jersey Devil because I'm not from that area and I wasn't really familiar. But the Jersey Devil dates back to 1735, and the local legends say that basically this family, known as the Leeds family, who really did exist according to census records, was due with their 13th child, but the mother, being overwhelmed as it was, cursed the child and said, let it be born a devil. The legend says that the baby was born, but that it was born this demonic entity with a horse's head and bat wings and a tail, and as soon after its birth, it flew up the chimney and out across the New Jersey Pine Barrens. And for centuries since, the Jersey Devil has been blamed for devouring livestock, making horrible screams, and for bringing bad luck, and is sort of widely regarded as just an omen of evil. But some New Jerseyans have adopted the claim of the Jersey Devil and say that it's actually a protector of the Pine Barrens. So if you're from New Jersey, I would love to hear your thoughts on this story and whether you believe the Jersey Devil actually exists or if it's just an urban legend. But I did look into the family, the Leeds family, and there is record, as I mentioned, of the parents, Japhet and Deborah Leeds. On the 1735 census, there is record of them having 12 children. There's no record of a 13th. However, back then, if a child was born with a birth defect or a condition that was not easily explained by the medical knowledge they had at the time, it wouldn't be that far-fetched that the child would be sheltered or hidden from public life entirely so that the family could avoid ridicule. So now that you have that history, we can get into Antonio's story. And he says he was born and raised in South Jersey and has heard this story as long as he could remember, but he always rolled his eyes at it and thought that it was just something that parents told their kids to keep them out of the woods. That is until October of 2022. Antonio says he is an experienced hiker and he's an amateur photographer. And at the time, he had just started talking to this girl who also loved the outdoors and he wanted to impress her. So on a cool, crisp fall day, he invited her to come along with him on a hike in the Pine Barrens to see some ruins that he had read about online. He had hiked the Pine Barrens many times before and knew many of the trails and some old fire roads, as well as the sites of some other abandoned ruins, and so he thought this would just be a cool way to bring her somewhere that she's never seen before. And so they drove along one of these old fire roads, parked his truck, and they headed off down the trail. It was a beautiful day, and they were enjoying their conversation and getting to know each other as they hiked. But about an hour and a half into the hike, they stopped at a muddy patch because they noticed there were hoof prints. They were distinctly a horse's. They were big, they were deep, and they were fresh. The girl he was with says something along the lines of, "Oh, I would love to go on a horseback ride in here. It would be so pretty." And he made a mental note to look up any nearby horse stables or barns so that he could take her in the future. But he also remembers feeling like the hoof prints were out of place because while he knew that you can ride horses in certain parts of the Pine Barrens, the trail that they were on was specifically designated for walking. And he didn't know of any farms or riding stables in the nearby vicinity. And so, whatever, he made a mental note of it and was like, this is probably some idiot riding here illegally. They continued on, and a few minutes later, they heard a singular, clear ding off in the distance. It sounded like a metal bell. The girl he's with says, "Did you hear that?" And they both stopped and listened. There was silence, and then they heard another ding. And they both agreed that it didn't sound like a phone or a church bell. It sounded like an old metal handbell. And then they heard another one, and he looked down at his phone and realized that he had no service. He asked the girl, "Do you have service?" She says no, and they both noted that there were no roads nearby or no near houses. There was no logical source for where this sound was coming from. They continued walking, and every minute or so as they moved, they would hear the same singular ding. But now they were curious and wanted to know where that dinging was coming from, and so they continued on, and they noticed that the forest was getting quieter with each step, and there were no more birds and no more bugs, and all they could hear was the sound of each other breathing and their boots on the leaves. And then they can see what looks to be a fence line of rotted wood posts in the distance. It was an old property boundary, and Antonio's thinking this must be the ruins that I read about online. And so they come up to the property, and that's when they heard some voices. And he says at first he thought it was other hikers, but then they noticed that the accents were very wrong and out of place. They were very thick and colonial sounding, and they heard a man shout something and a woman answer sharply, and then they heard a third voice that they couldn't quite catch, but it sounded very tense. They were expecting to come up on some kind of like historical reenactment or maybe a film crew, and so they quietly walked closer to the property line. And then they stepped into a clearing and stopped dead in their tracks, because ahead of them was a crude wooden house, and there were no phones or anything modern that they could see, no coolers, no cars, nothing that would indicate that these people had arrived to shoot a film or perform a historical reenactment. But all of these people were dressed like they were from the 1700s. They came up on about 6 or 7 people, all in period clothing, with one woman that was heavily pregnant, and she looked tired and scared with her hand on her belly. A man stood next to her holding a lantern, even though it was still daylight, and off in the distance they could see another man seemingly standing guard and on watch for something, holding an old musket. All of them had dirty faces, dirty clothes, and genuine worry lines on their face. And so him and the girl look at each other and they're like, what is this? Some kind of elaborate prank? Are there hidden cameras out here? Strangers still, no one seemed to notice them, even though they stood in clear view. And as they watched, they heard another bell ring behind them, somewhere closer this time, and everyone in the gatherings head snapped to look in their direction, except they weren't looking at them. They were looking past them at the trees. He says they watched as real terror hit their faces instantly. The pregnant woman backed toward the house. The musket guy raised his weapon. One woman started crying, and another man dropped to his knees in prayer. Then, he says, from maybe 50 feet behind them, they heard the most blood-curdling scream of their lives. It didn't sound human. It sounded like a horse in pain. He said it was the kind of scream that makes every hair on your body stand up. And since this happened, he has read every Jersey Devil report that exists on the internet. And this sound matched that exactly. Panic exploded in the clearing. People were scrambling inside and in every direction to get under cover. And then they noticed what seemed to be a dark shadow coming over the gathering. And so they looked up, expecting to see rain clouds, but when they looked back, the entire scene had vanished. He said it was like reality glitched for a split second, and both he and the girl he was with stared at each other in disbelief. They were standing in the normal, untouched pine barrens again, with no one and no structures around them. It was just them and the trees, and then a single ding in the distance before it faded into silence. Antonio says he would not have believed what he had seen had there not been another person with him. They both booked it back to the car, and on the way home, he said they both gaslit themselves, trying to find a logical explanation for what they had experienced. They came up with the ideas of heat exhaustion, of dehydration, of vivid daydreams, but couldn't explain the shared hallucination of the gathering and the bell. And the girl said that she hadn't believed in the Jersey Devil either, but they started tearing into any history they could find, and they both found that it does tie to real records in the early 1700s pine barrens, and though multiple versions exist, the core is always the same, about a cursed 13th child born in 1735 that then flees into the nearby woods, and some accounts even mention strange bells right before. Antonio says that while it didn't work out with the girl that he was with that day, he never forgot his experience, and so in 2023 he decided to go back. He brought his camera again, and he borrowed his friend's drone in order to see if he could find the clearing to just sort of make sense of what he saw. And so he parked on the same old fire road and headed down the trail, and about an hour and a half into the hike he comes across the same muddy patch, and there's hoof prints again, and buried in the mud next to the trees he finds a single metal bell. He said it was green with corrosion and clearly ancient, but he picked it up and took it home with him. While he didn't find the clearing or any evidence that what he and the girl witnessed was real, he did bring the bell home with him and had it looked at by a local historian who knows antiques. And that historian confirmed that the bell is genuine 18th century craftsmanship, though he has no explanation of how it got there that day. He says though he's never heard it ring again, he still hasn't, and now he doesn't dismiss the old stories as much as he used to. Even stranger, he says every October he feels a strange pull to go back to that section of woods to see if he can find some remnant of that experience actually existing. He says he hasn't because he's too scared. But part of him feels like something unfinished is still out there, and that Pine Barrens have secrets, and he feels like he walked into one of them. So what do you all think? Is there anyone from New Jersey or the Pine Barrens area that can weigh in here? I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you have a spooky scary story time, whether it's related to this topic or something else entirely, please send it in. We would love to hear it.
I used to be able to wake myself up from nightmares until I moved into this house. If you're new here, I'm Krista, and on my account I tell spooky stories either submitted to me or found on the internet. Today's story was submitted by Natalia. When I was about 9, my family moved into a new 3-bedroom house. I had to sleep in a temporary room with a small storage door and the slanted wall while my actual bedroom was being painted. I was terrified of that little door and spent my nights staring at it until I eventually ran to my parents' room for comfort. Normally, I was a lucid dreamer and could easily force myself to wake up during nightmares. But one night, I fell into a deep dream that I simply could not escape from. It felt like something was actively keeping me asleep. In the dream, I was kneeling at the top of our staircase. I peeked over the side toward my temporary bedroom and saw a tall, faceless black figure leaning over my bed. I tried to run but hesitated and peeked over the stairs again. The figure was suddenly much closer to me. I tried to run down the steps, but I was moving in slow motion and my legs felt like jello. I had to army crawl down the stairs while the figure chased me from behind. Once I hit the bottom step, my normal speed returned. I looked into the framed entryway of the living room, and the dark figure was already standing there, waiting for me. I ran through the dining room and the kitchen to the back room, where I found my parents. I quickly told them something was chasing me, and they helped me search the house, but we found nothing. Right after that, I finally woke up. I immediately ran to my parents' room in real life because I was too terrified to sleep in my room. I ended up having that exact same nightmare about 5 times a year for the 6 years we lived there. The entire house always felt cold and uneasy, and my parents and sisters felt it too. We eventually moved to a new house, and the heavy feeling completely disappeared. I haven't had that dream since we moved, and I feel like I could finally relax in my own home. I'm really glad that you moved out and that you have stopped having these nightmares since, because having the same dream 5 times a year for 6 years, that is absolutely insane. Unrelated, but I definitely know what you mean when you're having a dream and suddenly, you feel like you're jello and you can't run. That is the worst in nightmares. Thank you so much, Natalia, for submitting this story. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
Spooky scary story time. This story was sent in to me by somebody who wants to remain anonymous. And heads up, this is a very lengthy story. This still scares me, and every time I think about it, I get a feeling something is watching me. My boyfriend, who I experienced this with, never believed in the supernatural until after this incident. This happened last summer, in late July. My boyfriend and I live in the suburbs. Every weekend, when we didn't have work, we would go downtown. Where I live, every weekend in the summer, there is a big drum circle in a local park. For context, I used to be homeless and lived in a large encampment when I was 16 to 18. That encampment was close to by where this event happens. A lot of homeless people go to this event because it's free and the cops usually don't care about any substances at this weekly event. So me and my boyfriend rode on our bikes. This is very important later. We were meeting some of my old friends that used to live at the encampment with me. My boyfriend didn't like me hanging out with them, but he knew that it was part of me, so he came to keep me safe. He didn't have a problem with them personally, just the fact that the area had a lot of drug use. We went to hang out with my friends and chill at the drum circle. We had fun as usual. While we were there, I was looking for my friend. Let's call him Henry. He was an older man, late 60s. He was in the military a long time ago. When he got out, he developed a drug problem and ended up on the streets. He got clean, but still couldn't get a stable job. He helped me a lot when I was in the streets. He would play his guitar for money, and sometimes he would buy me food, and we would eat together. He gave me his tips on how to stay safe. He taught me how to survive. Places to shower, places that give out freebies, and places to avoid. He didn't have a phone, and he didn't live at the encampment. He was a drifter, and he liked it that way. He liked to meet new people. I asked my other friends if they have seen him, and they said no. He was usually there on the weekends, but we figured he just didn't come, for whatever reason. At around 8:30 to 9 p.m., the drum circle was slowing down and most people went home or started leaving the area. My boyfriend and I left on our bikes. We just got onto the highway. It wasn't completely empty, but it had less cars than usual. It was just after rush hour. We came to a junction and continued driving straight, but there was a truck coming from the other side. And I physically felt the road shaking under me and saw the giant headlights coming closer. I guess the driver failed to see us, and it was coming right at us. We didn't know what to do and started to panic. I remember trying to go faster, trying to get to the other side before the truck got us. The last thing I remember was hearing my boyfriend very muffled screaming at me before I felt something hit my bike and throw me onto the ground. Everything was blurry. It went from black to seeing slight glimpses. I was on the ground. I could smell smoke and burnt rubber. I could see broken bits of my blue Vespa scattered everywhere along with my boyfriend's black Harley Davidson laying on its side. I felt this pain, this unbelievable pain in my head and body, but it was so painful that I couldn't scream or cry. I felt myself let out a small groan. I remember looking up to the sky thinking these are my last moments. I then saw a man walk towards me. He looked down at me. I sort of recognized him. He looked like my friend Henry, but younger. This man had wavy blonde hair to his shoulders. His facial hair was well kept, and he had a fuller face. I remember him smiling down at me. A sudden feeling of peace came over my body. Then I closed my eyes. My head buzzed. I don't know how else to describe it. And I opened my eyes again. I swore to God I was straddling my bike in the parking lot we parked in with my helmet in my hand, about to put it on. I looked at my helmet and stared at it for a really long time, before looking next to see my boyfriend standing by his bike with the same expression on his face that I had. I went to touch his shoulder to see if he was okay, but he just freaked out and told me not to touch him. He was breathing heavily, whispering, "What the fuck?" We still don't know how to explain it. We got ourselves together and went home, but we waited a good half hour before going on the highway. That night, I don't think we got any sleep. I later asked my boyfriend what he saw. He gave me a similar story to mine, saying that he saw the truck coming and was deciding what to do when he saw me try to speed up, so he called out to me to stop, and the truck hit me before barreling towards him. How he saw the same guy, I didn't tell him about the guy at first. I just told him, "I swear we died and that truck hit us." To top this all off, about a week later, I heard from some of my other street friends that Henry passed away a few weeks back. This breaks me to this day. Since Henry had no next of kin, someone who knew him identified him and the city cremated him. We held a little ceremony for him. I swear that the man I saw was Henry and that he came to protect me one last time. Thank you so much for sending that story in. And I agree. I do think that Henry came to protect you one last time.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much because you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, yeah! Hi, bestie boo, I missed you. What you doing? You wanna go get your snack? You wanna go? Yeah. So I have great news for you guys. Your girl is now an executive director at a radio station. Yeah! It's going to be worldwide. I have been trusted to literally 180 the radio stations towards the new generation, which means you guys will get podcasts, radio shows with story times. Yep, anything y'all want. Stay tuned. I ain't gonna say too much. I just wanted to let you know because I was so excited to tell my besties. Anyway, let's get on with the story time. Oh, don't forget, I have my story times in long form on my YouTube channel. Don't watch nobody else's because they're making money off of me. So, for the sake of the story, let's call this guy James. Now, James is a banger. And when I mean banger, I mean gangbanger. I ain't gonna say which gang or nothing like that, but just know he was in there. He was deep. Anyway, one day, him and his other banging friends were outside. It was a summer day, you feel me? They outside. First, they were at a park, but then they decided to leave the park and start heading to the hood. So boom, they walking past. And as they're walking past, one of his friends is like, "Yo, you see that nigga over there?" He like, "Yeah, what about him?" The friend is like, "Yo, look at his watch. That shit expensive as fuck. Let's go get it." And usually James would be with that. Except when he looked over there, that man looked like he was with his elderly mom. Literally helping her walking the street and stuff like that, right? And he can only assume that's his mom because they look exactly alike. And so he tells his friend, like, hey, like, I mean, I'm cool with it, but like, he with his mom. Like, his mom is older. And the other nigga, like, who gives a fuck? Let's go get the watch. How about this? We don't rob the mom, and we only rob him. He like, you was planning on robbing the mom too? I thought we was talking about the nigga. Anyway, this turns into an argument because he's not going for it. James is not about to go rob this man with his elderly mom right next to him. Because although James know that he wasn't in the right life and he wasn't doing the right things, he was raised by Caribbean. And certain shit you just can't come back from. And he tried to, explain that to his friends, but they on some type of shit like, nigga, we don't give a fuck what you talking about. We about to rob this man and take his watch. So he like, y'all can go do that. I'm going home. And they start calling him pussy. They start really trying to play with his character type shit. Anyway, whatever. He goes home. They actually really go and rob that man. However, because of that day and that argument, his friends started to look at him a little bit different. They started to look at him like he's pussy. They start talking about him like, yo, this nigga, like, because of an elderly woman, he didn't want to rob the nigga. What about real situation where niggas really gotta get that? If it's an older woman next to him, you ain't gonna do that? Anyway, this started some tension with on and off argument to where about like a month later, him and that friend actually become enemies. Mind you, they're in the same gang. It got to a point where they low-key start like threatening his family type shit. And that's when he really like draws the line. So he spoke to his family about it. Although his family, like, they knew they wasn't supporting anything that, obviously, they're Caribbean parents. They don't, he didn't even really tell them he was in a gang for real. He just said, I got some friends that I'm beefing with and shit. And they low-key trying to like threaten my family. So I need y'all to keep your eyes out, So boom, fast forward. One night, they go to sleep. And his mom is always mommy. Mommy always has the dream. His mom has a dream that somebody came to her and told her, like, someone is going to come to y'all house at night in 3 days and assassinate each and every one of y'all. And so when mom woke up, she was like, oh, this ain't no joke. That's a Caribbean mom. So she know, like, that wasn't no regular dream. Is that a crack on my white shield? Hold on. I just discovered not one, but like multiple. What is happening? Anyway, back to the story. Anyway, in the middle of the night, mom wakes up from that dream, wakes James up, told James to pack his stuff. He's moving to Texas. James is like, what? What are you talking about? Mom is like, yeah, I'm not fucking around. You're moving to Texas. I know what you be doing. I know you be gangbanging and shit like that. Now you've put my family at risk. Do you know your friends are about to come here in 3 days to assassinate all of us? James is like, they ain't gonna do that. Like, they expect, he expect them to do shit like maybe rob them or like threaten them. But like, he never really expected niggas to really like try to take him and his family out. Same night, and I mean same night, mama books the flight for the next day. She didn't even ask her sister for permission. She had to wait till the morning to call her sister and be like, yo, James is living with you now. Anyway, they discreetly, like the next day, Jay moves away. Nobody knows anything about it because it was so sudden. But mom and her family, they can't just up and move their entire life. Like, this is her house, So they had an uncle that's actually a cop. So she tells the uncle everything that's happening, like the dream and everything, because you can't just go to the police station and say, hey, I had a dream that they're going to come assassinate me, But uncle is also Caribbean, so he would understand. So what ended up happening is that mom, her husband and the rest of James' siblings left for that night that they were supposed to come. Uncle stayed in the house armed. He was the only one in the house at that night. However, he did tell his police cop buddy friends, like, I may need y'all help tonight, so I need y'all to be really fucking close to this house. That's exactly what happened. And indeed, around 1 a.m, Uncle was up. He made sure he wasn't asleep the entire night. A black tinted out car pulls up. Indeed, 3 mashed up motherfuckers come out that car. Indeed, one of them go to the back, break the window, Unc was prepared. You feel me? Like, he was prepared. So immediately he calls his buddy friends like, they're here. Buddy friends was really only down the block. Unc didn't like really say anything because he was kind of like waiting for buddy friends to get here so that they can all, get trapped and stuff like that. And buddy friends really got there fast. They got there like 5 cars deep. They blocked the car that came, the black car, they blocked the driveway, and they basically surrounded the house. That's when Unc came out. Unc basically told them, y'all better stay right the fuck here if y'all want to live. But of course, they ain't gonna try to do that. They tried to run. Obviously, they didn't get too far because the cops was outside. They got the two that tried to run. The other one did try to run. Once he saw, like, his friends, get got, fortunately, he tried to, I guess, what Unc thought is that he was going for, like, a hostage situation. He tried to pull out his gun on Unc, but Unc is a cop. You can't do that to a cop. So, guess what happened? And turns out, that's that same nigga that wanted to rob that man next to his freaking mom. Same one that wanted to do it so bad because of that watch. The same one that still did it anyway, even after James said, I ain't doing it. Now, after this whole thing, unfortunately, James' family did have to move not too long after, because then y'all know how gangs work. Like, it started a whole, everybody blaming James. James is a snitch. James had, 12 at his house and shit. 12 shot, Anyway, so James can never come back to that town again. But James did want to, share his story. And all because he didn't want to, Anyway, y'all, I have to go into work now. I'm at the radio station. I need y'all to understand. There's the CEO, and then there's me. Anyway, don't forget to get your ebook. Don't forget to go over to my YouTube channel and stay tuned for more info, okay? Oh, don't forget to let me know what you ate, all right? I love you. Bye.
Let's talk about the time that I interrupted a tattoo session to ask if the tattoo parlor was haunted. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about pretty scary stuff, and usually I talk about other people's experiences, but sometimes I talk about my own. And this particular experience is one that I actually forgot about because it happened a while ago, while I was kind of in the slump of not making videos very often. But I was just sitting here and thinking about it, and it's just so wild to me. Because there have been a couple different experiences that I've had in the last, year and a half where I've considered, why do I feel this way sometimes? But anyways, I show up to this tattoo shop with my now ex, and I specifically got him a tattoo for his birthday, and we are sitting there for literally hours. The building is in an older part of town, in a historic unit, and I had known that it was an old building. You can obviously see it from the outside, but I didn't know anything about the building prior to going to his appointment. But I remember after a couple of hours, I started getting really lightheaded, and I just started to feel not very well. And the only way that I can describe it is it's literally your battery is completely empty, and it's not like a social battery thing. It's you feel sick. And eventually I just got up and excused myself and called my mom outside, and I was like, I think that there's something in the building that is bothering me, or it just knows something is up with me. I don't know. And my mom and I were sitting on the phone for probably 30 minutes before my ex comes outside, and he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I think that there's a ghost in the building. I don't know if it's haunted or what. And he was like, I bet you the tattoo shop owner will tell you if it is or not. Because there's only 2 artists in this entire building, and we were the only ones there. And that was my immediate question, right? I would just walk back inside and I was like, hey, this can sound super crazy, but do you have a ghost? And I shit you not, he stops everything that he's doing and looks at me and is like, yes, I'm almost certain that we do have a ghost because this was a church turned crematorium. And I just stare at him and I'm like, what? And then he starts talking more and more about his experiences, and he's like, there's stuff that flies off the shelves all the time. There's doors that shut by themselves. Sometimes we just hear things. And I don't know what it was, but after that conversation, it was much more tolerable, and I was able to sit through the rest of my ex's appointment. But how weird is that? I was just sitting there and I was like, I feel nauseous. Went outside, called my mom, I was like, I think there's this something in the building. And there was. I'd love to know if people have similar experiences with this as well. So if you do, comment down below. But anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
He hit the call button and told the nurse that the scary nun said they were coming to take him home. Lip gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now focus. Scary story time, Fright Night Files. This is not only a scary story, but there are receipts to prove that all of this happened. I'm going to show you in this video, so if you don't like really scary things, maybe don't watch this because this has a lot to do with dark entities. We're going to call her Ava. Ava is a nurse. She was working 3rd shift. She said that the building was having a lot of work done to it. They were doing some kind of construction during the day, so they had one end of it closed off. But on that end of the building, all night long, they kept hearing this growling noise, like screams, footsteps, doors opening and shutting, and they couldn't find what was causing the whole thing to happen. Well, one of the nurses needed to leave for the night, so she decided to walk her out, just for safety measures. And when she gets out there, she sees this dark mass. Both of them see this dark mass behind a van. Go and they check. No one's there. And this mass is just kind of hovering. One of her residents was on the brink of death, but he had made it very clear that he did not believe in the afterlife. And if he was destined to go down below, then so be it. A few hours later, she's outside for her break when she notices this. Make sure you look at this in a dark lit room. But you can see up here, there is this mass. If you look in the mass, you will see people, like things. Like, let me show you one of them. Here's one of them where you can tell that the arm is like bent over. He's kind of crouched, crawling forward. He appears to have a collared shirt type vibe on, maybe even a tie. Very creepy. I lightened it, by the way, so you could see. She even recorded it, and you can watch as the mass is like crawling up and going across the building, which is important because as she comes back in from her break, she can hear the man screaming for the nurses. All of them go in there. He's screaming that they're there. They've come to get him, and he's pointing towards the window. And that's when she realizes that that mass had climbed over the building and was now just hovering outside of his window. He was asking for prayer, saying that he did not want to go with them, asked them to pray with him. So they all start praying. He asks for forgiveness, and then he's just gone. She's looking back at the photos and stuff that she took, and she got a photo of that scary nun. The nun is in this photo. Can you see her? She's up there. Do you see her? Her face is directly behind my face. I'm going to make the face and then slide over so that you can see her. Mouth, eyes, habit. Thank you to all of the nurses that prayed with him that night so that he didn't have to leave with her. Can you see her?
If I'm going to be scared, you are going to be scared with me. It is time for another spooky story. I am Autumn in Appalachia. Send me your spooky stories, add me on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. Same handle. Without further ado. This story comes from Melissa. Now, she said that it seems like her mom growing up kind of gravitated toward places that had something paranormal going on. But there was one particular house that she lived in growing up. She said the energy was like evil, very dark, and it stands out in her mind for a good reason. So when they first move into the house, it's Alyssa, her mom, Alyssa's younger brother. His name is Austin. He's like 5 at the time. And then her aunt and her uncle. There's an upstairs, there's a downstairs. And the very first night that they move into this house, Alyssa's mom is in the shower. As she is taking a shower, she suddenly notices that something is like blocking the light out. She doesn't think too much of it at first, but when she gets out of the shower and she goes to look in the mirror, she sees 2 huge handprints on her shoulders. And she said the way these handprints were positioned, it was as if something had been standing behind her and they put their hands down over her shoulders like this. There's no way she could have contorted her arms in such a way to like do that to her own shoulders. So at that point, she starts questioning whatever had been blocking the light out, and she tried to debunk it by recreating it. The only thing that like really recreated it was when she actually put the towel completely over the bathroom light. Another night, it's the middle of the night, everybody is asleep. Alyssa's aunt, her name is Brittany, is asleep on the couch, and Alyssa's mom is in her bedroom. Now, it's important for context. When Alyssa's mom is laying in her bedroom, if her door is open, she can see if somebody is walking in or out of the bathroom. So Alyssa's aunt wakes up, gets up to go to the bathroom, and right before she walks into the door, she hears Alyssa's mom like whisper, yell, "Brittany, do not go in there. He just went in there." Now this obviously freaks the aunt out, so she runs and jumps in bed with the mom, and she's like, "Who is he? What are you talking about?" And the mom goes on to explain that she saw something or somebody walk into that bathroom, and she thinks it is the boogeyman that her son Austin, which is Alyssa's 5-year-old brother, had recently seen and been complaining about. Now, Alyssa's mom and Austin are not the only ones who ended up encountering this boogeyman. We are going to discuss Austin's first encounter with him, but we're also going to talk about some other people who saw him in the house too. And they don't know what it was, who it was, but it creeped them out, and he had really dark energy. So Austin's first encounter, he is going into the kitchen. He's walking from the living room to the kitchen to get his aunt a soda. When he's like halfway through the dining room, he hits this like invisible wall, she said, this like invisible
invisible force field, and he starts screaming bloody murder. It terrifies him, and he runs back into the living room and goes to hide behind the entertainment center. He is like shaking, and they're like, what's wrong, and he explains the invisible wall thing, but also says he saw the boogeyman in the kitchen. Now, Alyssa says she saw the boogeyman too, so she lives upstairs. Right outside of her bedroom door is a second kitchen, but the family doesn't ever use that kitchen. One night, Alyssa wakes up in the middle of the night. She decides to open her bedroom door because it's stuffy in her room. When she goes to open the door, she sees a man, clear as day, like a real physical person, standing over the kitchen sink in that upstairs kitchen, and he is like bent over the sink. She sees him from behind, and so she's like, what the hell? It freaks her out, but she's trying to rationalize in her mind, and she's like, maybe that's like my uncle. So the next morning at the kitchen table, she's like, hey, why were you like upstairs last night, like bent over staring into that kitchen sink? And he's like, I wasn't, I was asleep. And like, why would I be staring into a kitchen sink in the middle of the night? So it was not him. Another time, Alyssa's mom is home and she's downstairs. She begins to hear a woman or a girl sobbing uncontrollably upstairs, and it sounds like it's coming from that kitchen area. And it really, she's like, somebody is up there like distressed. And so she goes up the stairs to see what is going on. And when she gets to the kitchen, her heart stops because she sees a girl facing away from her. She is like dripping wet, like soaking wet, and she is crying. And when this girl turns to face Alyssa's mom, right before she gets completely turned around to make eye contact, the girl disappears right in front of her face. Whoever this girl was, Alyssa theorizes that this wet footprint that was in this upstairs closet, that girl was responsible for. There was a footprint that was essentially on the ceiling. They had like a slanted ceiling in this closet, and no matter how many times they washed it, what sort of like cleaners and chemicals they used, that footprint would still appear there, and they could never get rid of it, and they couldn't explain it. Also, it's in a weird spot because it's kind of like on that ceiling, right? Now, while Alyssa never saw this girl like her mom did, she still had experiences with her. She said that she oftentimes, if she was like in her room, would hear this girl like singing to herself. And she said that she had a karaoke machine growing up. So if she were like playing music in particular on her karaoke, this little girl seemed to enjoy it and would actually like hum or sing along to the music. Now, she said that this little girl, like, she kind of had like a bond with her. She didn't feel that she had like the kind of negative energy that other things like the boogeyman had in the house. There were 3 other instances that she mentioned that I will briefly go over, one being their very last night in the house, which I think is the most creepy. I realized I forgot to mention one of Alyssa's siblings. So she had a younger brother and a younger sister. Now, the younger sister, she was so young when this experience happened that she couldn't even talk. But she one day comes up. She is hysterical. She comes up to Alyssa's mom. She is screaming. She's crying. And even though she can't talk, she is like pointing at this corner of the wall. When Alyssa's mom looks over, she can audibly hear and see scratch marks appearing on this wall, like going horizontally across the wall. Terrified them. Another time, Alyssa's cousin is over at the house, and this house had a basement too. So her cousin inexplicably gets locked in this basement. It took hours for them to get her out of this basement. There were 3 grown men trying to break the door down, and they, for some reason, could not get in there. And whatever her cousin saw, whatever she experienced in that basement, they don't know, but it scared her so bad that she never came back into that house. Now, the very last thing that happened there, they lived here for almost a year. One night, Alyssa's aunt is sitting in the living room, and she keeps getting like something keeps like touching her, and she finally gets so fed up with it. She gets like I think she said it was like a Zuzu doll, some sort of like stuffed animal or whatever. She throws it as hard as she can into the dining room just out of frustration. They all watched this doll mid-air stop and fly the other direction, and it literally flew back and hit her aunt directly in the face. Terrified them. At that point, Alyssa's mom is like, screw this, and she takes the kids over to the granny's house to spend the night.
Alyssa has since she's been out of this house for years and years, has tried to look up the history of the home, tried to find something, she can't, and she says one day she hopes to go back there or try to figure out some sort of history. In particular, she'd love to figure out who this girl was and what happened to her on that property, because she believes that that little girl is a ghost that potentially like passed away in that house. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments. That thing about that like stuffed animal stopping mid-air and flying back and hitting her aunt in the face, that is freaky. I'll catch y'all in the next one.
Most of us can agree we all love a good glitch story, and I came across one in the wild and I had to share it with you. So a woman named Lena says, I have to share a massive reality glitch that happened to me and my brother-in-law. She says she's never experienced anything like this in her life and her rational mind is completely blown. She leaves her destination at 1:45 p.m. and she says the drive usually takes about 35 minutes. Her plan was to get home and have about 30 to 40 minutes of free time while she waited for her children to get off the bus. She makes note that the school bus usually drops the children off about 3 o'clock sharp. So she gets home, she makes herself a cup of coffee, and she sits down to relax and she checks the clock. It is now 2:30 p.m. She's thinking, perfect, plenty of time. So she starts to relax. Then she says a little while later, she goes to check the clock again because she's figuring, all right, it must be at least 2:50 now. Just making sure everything's on time. But guys, she checked the clock again and it said 1:45. This was the exact time she left her original destination. She said, I couldn't believe my eyes. I ran around all over the whole house looking at every single clock and every one, sure enough, said 1:45. Okay, get this, because yeah, maybe you could say she looked at the clock wrong before she left her destination, but listen to this. Right at that exact moment, as she is kind of frantic, her sister's husband pulls up to her house. So he is in a total panic, convinced it is almost 3 p.m. Here, he thought he completely missed the kids' school pickup at 2:40. So he had come over to wait for the school bus instead, assuming that his kids would be on there too. She says she asked him, well, what time do you think it is? He pulls out his phone. He looks at the screen and his jaw drops. His phone says 1:45 p.m. She goes, we were both in completely different places, doing completely different things, but both of us were 100% convinced and experienced that it was an hour later. She said, we both reality checked our clocks at 2:30 p.m. only for the universe to hit rewind back to 1:45. She says, how does this even happen? Has anyone in Ireland, or anywhere else for that matter, experienced a massive time jump or reset today? She said, it feels like the simulation literally lagged and rolled us back an hour. Now, it is Monday night. I did come across this story yesterday. So that was Sunday, June 14th, and in Ireland. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is a really interesting one because two totally different people in different places experienced a weird time glitch. And if you have a creepy story of your own that you are hesitant to tell because you think people will think you're nuts, you would be a perfect fit here. Please send it in. And if you're new here, follow for more creepy story time. And just a quick note, my merch finally dropped. So if you are interested in creepy story time apparel, check out my link tree. It's in my bio.
We are back with another Trini Paranormal, Trini series story, Trini folklore for you today. And guess what? I have a story from myself to tell you all about a paranormal or two paranormal experiences I would have had when I was going in UE a few years ago. Before we get into the story, I just want to let you all know that we have a surprise event happening. Can you guess below what is the surprise event? I'll be letting you all know very shortly. Anyways, after the story. So a lot of the times in the past few years, I would have gotten the question of if I've ever had a paranormal experience happen to me. And I would say that I've had a few experiences, and the most recent of experiences would have been in UE, and that would have been a few years ago. Now the thing about this experience is that it was a few experiences, and it wasn't just me who had the experience, it was actually a lot of girls who were staying in the downstairs where I was staying as well. So this series of events, it would have been 3 different events. 2 of the activities was experienced by a roommate / housemate. So the first day I went to school, I would have reached up to UE on a Sunday. So I was the first to reach us around after 4 in the afternoon, and my co-workers, my roommates didn't come as yet. So pack up the stuff, I sit down by the table and I'm scrolling through social media and on YouTube and thing. And then at the corner of my eye, I see as if a little girl like run from my room to the kitchen, like really quickly. So I tell myself it has to be a trick of the eyes. I am probably just tired, or sometimes your eyes just play tricks on you. I didn't think nothing of it. The next day, me and my roommate were outside in the common area. We were studying, and after 1 o'clock, we were like, you know what? I'm tired. I'm gonna take a sleep. So the both of us went to sleep. Now, how our room is set up is that there's her bed, my bed, and then there's a walkway in the middle. At around 3 o'clock, and I noticed trick because I checked my phone right after 3 a.m. we heard a blood-curdling scream, screech sort of situation. It sounded like a woman was screaming at the top of her lungs. And it sounded as if it was coming from in the room, because it echoed in the room, and it sounded as though it was coming from in between the two of our beds in that walkway. I fly up confused, my roommate, she fly up confused as well, and she's like, what the hell is that? Now I look in through the window, I'm looking at the other apartments, there's nobody, the place is pitch dark, there's nobody there. But we were very confused as to how we heard the screaming happening in the middle of our room. So the grand finale happened during the week now. So everybody's outside in the common area, chit-chatting, talking and laughing. Now mind you, everybody locks their room doors because we like to be safe. Now how it is that there's this corridor with the room doors, and everybody's room doors are locked. And then we have a burglar proof, and then we have our door, and then another burglar proof, right? So nobody could come in. Suddenly, one of the doors slammed. It slammed very loud. Everybody jumped. Everybody got scared because we're confused. We were like, wait, everybody's doors are locked. I have seen all the doors when I'm sitting down in the couch, so I can see that all the doors were locked. So we're trying to figure out where this door slammed, and it sounded like it was in the house, right? We call upstairs. We were like, hey, did you all have a door slam by chance? And the girl upstairs was like, hey, I'm the only one in the apartment upstairs. Everybody else is not home, so all those doors are locked. And my door is locked because my AC is on. So no, it's not upstairs. So I was like, okay, let me just go and check and make sure everybody's door is locked. So I get up and I'm walking down the corridor and I'm like, okay, this door is locked. This door is locked. This door is locked. So how it is that we heard a slam? Now my roommate or housemate and now my best friend, she and I were walking, going down together. And we went to open the front door to see if by chance, it was the front door that was open and by chance we forget it and it slammed. It was locked, but when we go to twist open the lock, it's like a kind of deadbolt lock, like an old time lock. The lock started to rattle and it started to shake up and twist back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We panicked. Now I panicked, but I went into this autopilot where I'm like, I have to open this door and see if somebody playing a prank on us because this ain't fun. This ain't funny at all. Open the door now. There's nobody there. Remember, there's a burglar proof and then a second burglar proof. So you had to come through the first burglar proof in order to come by the second burglar proof to interfere with the door. Those burglar proofs were still locked. Everybody was panicking because the doors slammed. Everybody started to see the door rattling, the front door rattling, and the lock turning back and forth. And that same weekend, everybody, whether Hindu, Muslim, or Christian, their parents came, and everybody in their own way of form prayed, light their incense, did a Hawan who was Hindu, play religious prayers and hymns and stuff, and the situation would have subsided. Now, this is not the first time. A lot of people tend to talk about UE apartments being haunted and UE itself having haunted experiences, and plenty of people believe that it's because of the negative energies. Because remember, there's a lot of anxiety with exams and depression because people are not doing well in exams, people are going through a lot, financial stress, all of these sort of feelings, it tends to manifest and attract negative things. So that was one of my experiences in UE that was paranormal. But let me know, if you ever went to UE especially, have you ever had any one of those paranormal experiences happening in your dorm or your places of rental or even in the classrooms? Let me know.
So dude, there has been a lot of videos on my For You page about how like there's a timeline shift right now or a glitch in the matrix or something like that. And at first I was just like, okay, yeah, people are trying to get their fix on TikTok. They're just talking. But more than one person has said the exact same thing. And now that they've said it, I'm starting to like notice things are weird. I watched this one video of this woman who said that like this time of year right now, specifically this year, is feeling a lot like the early 2000s weather-wise. Like the weather, how things are looking, how things are feeling. And to be quite fucking honest, at first I didn't really feel a difference. But as I started to pay attention around me and like look around, I've been seeing fireflies everywhere this year. Every fucking where this year. Like my daughter caught one the other day. So I live in like the country, or like a city country-ish. There's barely any light pollution, okay? It's crazy because years ago, like the past couple years, longer than that, probably the past like 5 or 6 years, I have not seen, I don't want to say I haven't seen a single firefly, but I've seen like 1 or 2 fireflies, like barely any fucking fireflies. And now this year, they are everywhere. Like, what do you mean? How do they just rise up from the dead like that? And apparently, the Mona Lisa is fucking smiling again. Again! Can you believe it? Another one too. What is the other one? I can't even think of the other video. Oh my god, okay, I watched this one where this girl was like, yo, so there was like, we had this cousin, right, who died when she was 2 years old. She drowned. We went to her funeral and everything. And then a couple weeks ago, our parents fucking come to us and they're like, hey, we're gonna have a celebration for so-and-so, like a birthday celebration for so-and-so. And she's like, isn't she fucking dead? And her cousin also remembered her being dead and going to the funeral. And they had photos of themselves at this funeral, but they ended up being deleted. They're gone. Like, they don't have them anymore. Like, how would 2 people come up with this crazy false memory of their cousin dying? And then going all those years not knowing that she's still alive? That's weird. There's something weird going on.
I was looking back on my TikToks and I captured a very clear image of a pale-faced woman in the reflection or inside of the shop window behind me when my friend was filming a TikTok of me to Ed Gein's Mother's Sound on TikTok. I have slowed down the video because it's so quick. I want you to show the video on the pod, so I've cropped out my face and shortened it to the part where you see the woman. It was filmed in October at around 10 p.m. because we were off to Leeds to a gay bar. It was such a good night. And no, it's not my friend who's filming because you can see the flash of her phone covering her face a few centimetres away from the woman. I've slowed it down and sent you a screenshot in case you don't see it, but once you do, it's very clear. Thank you for reading this, and I'll scream if...
Oh my god.
Petrifying. Do you want to see the video first?
Show me.
Oh, it's horrific. Absolutely horrific.
No.
And there's a screen, she's put a screenshot.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
It's like a little, it's almost like a
if you
screen
slide
mask.
across, you can see, she's screenshotted it so you can see it properly.
Oh my god.
Isn't that spooky boots?
What's that then?
Isn't that scary?
Yeah.
Just before a gay bar in Leeds.
No pareidolia there.
No, there is not.
Want to get creeped out? Have you ever heard of the town Dublin, Wisconsin? A mysterious town known as Dublin, Wisconsin, described as a small and quaint place in the heart of Wisconsin. It's portrayed as an ideal road trip destination, perfect for making memories and taking pictures. But there's one major problem. The town does not exist on any map. No official records confirm that Dublin ever existed. There are no documents, no location, no physical evidence of the town. Yet, it remains one of Wisconsin's most widely unexplained legends because people remember this town existing. Some people claim they have memorabilia from Dublin, Wisconsin. Others insist they have personally been there or had family or friends that lived there. Here is a photo that was allegedly taken in Dublin, Wisconsin. So, Dublin was believed to be a small military town established in the 1960s. Like I said, there have been accounts of people who remember this town. For instance, there's a guy who swears his father lived there for over a year. Another person said that their father would constantly mention Dublin, Wisconsin before he passed away. But then sometime in, allegedly, the 1990s, Dublin, Wisconsin disappeared. It vanished completely, not just physically, but records of its existence were allegedly erased. Something that people did find strange is when they would start typing Dublin, Wisconsin in their map, an autocomplete option would come up of Dublin, Wisconsin. But clicking on it would lead to no results. Obviously, eventually this could be because so many people were putting it in on the map and searching for it. So That could be why, but was this happening originally? And if it was, that is sus. Some people believe that Dublin, Wisconsin disappeared because of a natural disaster, like a massive earthquake creating a sinkhole, swallowing the town. But I think we would have heard of that. Some believe that people may have moved away due to a failing economy. But again, there would be record of this town existing. Some people believe this is mass hallucination, while others believe that potentially this was a military experiment gone wrong. It was known to be a military town, and people believe that maybe the military did some kind of cover up or caused the town to disappear, really similarly to the Philadelphia experiment and the beliefs surrounding that. And if you don't know that story, the US Navy allegedly attempted to make the USS Eldridge invisible, and the ship was said to have teleported from Philadelphia to Norfolk. Some reports claim that crew members disappeared, others went mad, some flickered in and out of existence, or others allegedly fused to the ship themselves. Another theory about Dublin, Wisconsin connects this to a military project called Project Sanguine. This was proposed in the 1960s, and it was intended to create an underground communication system using extremely low frequency radio waves. And the goal was to communicate with deep sea submarines worldwide. If completed, the project would have covered over 40% of Wisconsin, and they would have installed massive underground cables, effectively turning the bedrock of Wisconsin into a giant radio antenna. So people wonder if Dublin, Wisconsin was somehow included in this, if it was somehow tied into this, but Project Sanguine was actually never fully implemented that we know of and was officially shut down in 2004. Have you ever heard of Dublin, Wisconsin, and do you think it really existed? My mind goes glitch in the matrix, but let me know what you think.
In the town that I live in, they just released the list of top creators in the area. And guess what? My name wasn't on it. And it's like, I don't really understand why I get blacklisted so much. Now, you could say, well, maybe you're not big enough. Maybe some of the other creators there are just much bigger than you. But actually, all of these creators on the list have less followers than I do, have a smaller fan base. And this is just another example of how I'm constantly getting blacklisted. And I don't know if it's because I talk about things that other people will not, or because I'm talking about something I'm not supposed to be talking about. But yeah, I mean, this happens to me all the time. You know, I don't have anybody reaching out to me saying, hey, do you want to come on my podcast? You know, I'd love to go on a podcast and tell stories and share some of the information that I have, but I never get invited. I'd love to go to some of these conventions. I've reached out to them. I said, hey, I will come there for free. I will bring all my stuff, man, and I will tell stories and we'll draw a huge crowd out there. But they all get back to me and they're like, sorry, we are not interested. So it's like, I just don't get it. You know, other paranormal groups, they don't want to work with me. They don't want nothing to do with me. A lot of people in the paranormal community are not welcoming towards me. And I haven't done anything to them. I never talk badly about anyone. You know, the only person that I say things about is, you know who, Mr. Zach Baggins. But other than that, you know, it's just me calling him out because I feel like he's done a lot of shady stuff. And I don't know if that has something to attribute to all of this, but for some reason, I keep getting blacklisted. I don't know. What do you guys think? One of the places that really creeps me out is the Superstition Mountains. Now, this is a place where people disappear all the time. It is very remote, it's very dangerous, and there's a lot of weird, strange things that happen in this area. Now, there was this story I heard from this Native American man. Now, he said when he was younger, he lived on a reservation not too far from the Superstition Mountains. And he said his grandfather always used to tell him, when you go out into the desert, he said if it starts to get dark, he said never look directly out into the open desert. He said just keep your head down. He said if you're walking at night, never look up at the sky. And if you hear something call your name, or you hear something call for help, even if it sounds like someone you know, do not respond. Run as fast as you can. So he said one night when he was a teenager, he was hanging out at a friend's house, and it was around 12:30 at night. He had to walk back to his house. And at this time, there was no one home. He was like home alone. So he leaves his friend's house and he takes off down the street. Now, on one side of the street, there's a couple houses. But on the other side, he said it was just an open area of the desert. And as he walked, he started to hear coyotes. They were letting off these loud howling sounds. And he said he turned and he looked out into the desert and he seen a set of eyes glowing, staring at him. He said these coyotes were kind of going nuts, like they were agitated by something. So he moved as fast as he could back towards his home. So he makes it to his house, and he said he ran inside, he closes the door. And outside, he could hear the coyotes howling, and they were making noise all around the house. After about an hour, he said he heard a knock at the door. Boom, boom, boom. And he's like, who could it be? You know, it's 12:30 at night. Like, who is coming to the door? Once again, boom, boom, boom. So he walks towards the door, and that's when he hears, "Let me in. It's your grandfather. Please, quick, let me in. It's your grandfather, please. I need to come in. Please, let me in." And he's like, "Grandfather, is that you? Like, what are you doing outside this late? Please, please, let me in. It's your grandfather, please." So he's like, "What? What's wrong with my grandfather?" So he starts walking to the door, and he gets ready to grab the handle. But he's like, "Wait a second, you know, it's it couldn't be my grandfather. He's on the other side of town, like he wouldn't come here this late at night." And he says, You're not my grandfather. Like, I don't know who you are, but you're not my grandfather." And he goes, "What are you talking about? It's me. I am your grandfather." And he started to tell him things like, when you were 5, you fell down off your bike and you hurt your knee. And, you know, I took you fishing over here at this area. And he knew all these things that his grandfather knew. But he said just something seemed off. And over again, you know, just he kept banging on the door. "It's your grandfather. Just let me in. Please let me in." So he said, you know, "Go away. You are not welcome here. Go away. You are not welcome here," over and over again. And he goes over to the window and he looks out. And that's when he said he seen this coyote running off the porch off into the desert. He said he knew at that moment what his grandfather was talking about. An Appalachian skinwalker is much different than the Navajo skinwalker. Okay, the first difference is that a Navajo skinwalker, right, is conjured up by a medicine man, whereas an Appalachian skinwalker is conjured up by a witch in the Appalachia who uses black magic. The other big difference between the Appalachian skinwalker versus the native skinwalker is that the Appalachian skinwalker tends to take the form of objects, and a lot of time almost just comes as an invisible force that calls out to people or follows them. Or, for instance, the Bell Witch, right? It wasn't a witch going after that family. It was a skinwalker that was conjured up to harm and, you know, terrify that family. So I got a story for you. This is a true story now, and I'm going to show you a picture as well. So there's a man named Donald. Donald was an avid hunter and trapper. He lived near the North Carolina-Tennessee border up in the Appalachian Mountains. And one day, you know, he's out hunting, and he's in the middle of the woods. And he set up, you know, in this deer stand. And he'd been out there all day, you know, and he's, you know, had been hunting for the whole week, so he was getting tired. He falls asleep and dozes off. Well, when he awakes, it's now nighttime, and it's gotten dark. And as he's adjusting some things in his tree stand, all of a sudden, whoosh, he hears this loud thing move over the top of him through the trees.
like it's some kind of large bird or something. And he thinks it's odd because, like, he hasn't seen, birds that big in that area. But then once again, whoosh, right? This big thing just passes over the top of him through the trees, and it's shaking all the branches. And then again, a third time. So, he gets down off his tree stand and is like, okay, it's time to head back to camp. As he starts, walking this trail back to camp, all of a sudden he hears something, say, Donald, Donald, hey, Donald, come play, and this voice just keeps calling to him. And he, it's like freaking out. He's terrified. So he takes off running, and he's running as fast as he can. And all of a sudden, boom, he trips and he rolls. And he realizes he just tripped over this root that is sticking out of the ground. And when he looks up, he notices this big, eerie-looking tree. And, it has no leaves on it, but it has branches that almost look like hands, and it looks like it has a face. And this tree starts staring at him and opens its eyes, and he can see that this tree has taken some kind of physical, like humanly form. And it starts reaching its branches down, and it grabs Donald, and it picks him up, and is shaking him and whipping him with the other branches. Well, Donald still manages to hold on to his rifle, and he just starts firing at the tree. And he manages to hit one of the branches that was holding his leg, and it basically breaks, and he falls to the ground. So he runs back to his cabin, and he gets inside, and he locks all the doors. And all night long, he can hear the tree lashing at the house, trying to get in. And the next morning, all is calm. But he notices outside, there's the tree. It has moved. It's next to the cabin. And he manages to take some pictures, which actually show the face in the tree. And this is the picture that Donald took.
A few years ago, I got a summer job as a fire lookout in a national forest. My entire job was just to sit up in a tall tower and look for smoke, basically. Most days super boring. I just sat up there for hours. I had a logbook, I had some binoculars, yeah. About a month into it is when I started to notice something, like a pattern. There would be a man that would stand on the ridge, and he was several miles away, like a bit away. And I figured that he was just another hiker, but he would be there every single evening around sunset. After a week of really zoning into this man that was there every single evening, I noticed that they always stood on the same spot of the ridge. They never moved, they never stood in different ways, they were in the same position the whole time. And so I wound up going on the radio, and I called it in. The ranger on duty, he got really quiet when I called it in, and he said, "Can you still see the man?" And I said, "Yes." And then he told me not to acknowledge the man, not to shine the mirror lights, not to put a flashlight on him, nothing. Naturally, I wanted to know why this was the response, and the ranger wouldn't tell me. A couple days later, obviously I got a little curious what would happen, so I took the mirror reflection, like the tower's signal mirror, and I turned it and I faced it towards the ridge, so the sunlight was hitting the ridge. He didn't react, he didn't move, literally nothing came of it. I went back inside, and then before dinner I checked on the ridge again, and for the first time all summer long, the man was gone. The ridge was empty. I figured the man had finally left, but then I noticed that there were footprints around the tower. Literally just a single set of footprints circling, like hundreds of them, almost like they were circling all night long, just looking up, figuring out how to get up to me.
Let's read a true, scary story. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy, because we're about to read a creepy story. I've never really told this story online because every time I think about it, I get the same uneasy feeling I had that night. This happened maybe 6 years ago when I was coming back home from a friend's house. It was late, somewhere around 1 a.m., and I decided to take a shortcut through a quiet road that passed near a large field. I had walked the route dozens of times before, so I wasn't worried about it. That night was unusually silent. There were no cars, no dogs barking, not even the sound of insects. About halfway down the road, I noticed someone standing near the edge of the field. At first, I assumed it was another person walking home, but as I got closer, I realized they weren't moving at all. They were just standing there, facing in my direction. Something about it felt wrong. I couldn't make out any of the details because it was dark, but I could tell the figure was unusually tall. I kept walking, trying not to stare. When I finally passed the spot where I had seen it, I glanced over, and the figure was gone. I immediately stopped and looked around. There was nowhere it could have disappeared to in just a few seconds. The field was open for hundreds of feet, and there were no trees or buildings nearby. I remember feeling a chill run through my body, but I convinced myself I was tired and imagining things. Then I heard footsteps behind me. They weren't loud, but they were clear enough to hear on the empty road. I turned around expecting to see someone, but there was no one there. The footsteps stopped the moment I turned. I stood still for a few seconds, listening. Nothing. As soon as I started walking again, the footsteps returned. This happened 3 times. Walk, footsteps, stop, silence. At that point, I was genuinely scared. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The road behind me was completely empty. I started walking faster and the footsteps seemed to match my pace. I didn't look back again. I just kept moving. When my house finally came into view, I felt relieved. I hurried to the front gate, unlocked it, and stepped inside. Before closing the gate, I looked down the street one last time. Someone was standing there. The figure was at the far end of the road, completely still. Even from that distance, I could tell it was unusually tall. What I remember most clearly was that it seemed darker than the darkness around it, almost like a shadow that didn't belong there. I slammed the gate shut and rushed inside. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I convinced myself that fear had gotten the better of me. But later that day, my neighbor asked me a strange question. He asked, "Were you outside last night?" I told him yes. He looked uncomfortable and said he had been looking out of his window around 1 a.m. and had seen me walking down the road. Then he asked, "Who was that person following you?" I felt my stomach drop. I had never told him about the figure. In fact, I hadn't told anyone. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened. Maybe there was a real person on that road. Maybe my mind filled in details because I was alone and tired. But I know one thing for certain. I wasn't imagining the footsteps, and according to my neighbor, I wasn't walking alone that night.
I wish I got more stories about Dybbuk boxes or more comments about Dybbuk boxes. Please excuse the way that I look, okay? I just got out of the shower, but I have gotten one singular email about a Dybbuk box, and let me explain. I've oftentimes called something like the scariest story I've ever read, blah, 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 blah. That story is seriously one that I think about probably daily, if not weekly. And I think it's primarily because you don't hear about Dybbuk boxes very much, especially traditional Dybbuk boxes that are bought off of the internet. And if you're not familiar with the story, I'll just make it quick with spark notes. This kid and his dad were watching a horror movie. They decided to buy a Dybbuk box. Dybbuk box shows up and it is covered in flies. And it stinks, rotting. You know where this is going. So they put it outside. Outside, it has bugs stuck to it after a day or two. And long story short, after they brought the Dybbuk box in the house, they started experiencing some pretty horrific paranormal experiences and eventually got rid of it. Had to have their home cleansed, etc., etc. And additionally, I have also personally seen a Dybbuk box in person at the Haunted Museum that I've made multiple videos about. And again, it was the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my life. And if you are not familiar with the story that I'm talking about and my experience there, I went to a Haunted Museum and they have this portion that's roped off with demonic stuff and things that have been used in rituals and evil. There's a jug of holy water outside of this section of the museum. You bless yourself, you go in, and there's a freaking Dybbuk box sitting there. And I don't know what it was. I was just staring at it and I was this thing just radiates this weird energy. I don't know. And I'm almost positive that was what made me sick when I went to the museum, was me staring at the Dybbuk box for too long. Well, I don't know. But if you have any experiences with Dybbuk boxes, please let me know, because I think that they're extremely interesting. And the stories that I do hear about them, I am just always so drawn in. But I haven't really gotten any stories, and the stories that I have seen and read, I've already read. So
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. When I was born, my family moved into an apartment. And from my earliest memories there until I was about 11 years old, there was always this strange feeling hanging over the place. My dad felt it too, even if we rarely talked about it. The rooms always had dark shadows no matter how bright the day was outside. And no matter how hot it might have been, the inside of that apartment was always freezing. I was just a kid, but I vividly remember constantly feeling like I wasn't alone. Like there was always someone standing just outside my bedroom door, or watching me from the hallway. I never felt comfort there, only uneasiness. The strangest part was that every single year, on the same exact night, I would have the exact same nightmare. It never changed. Not once. The details were always identical. Almost like someone was pressing play on the same horrifying movie over and over again. The dream always began the same way. I would wake up in my own bed. Everything would look completely normal. Morning sunlight poured through the curtains, birds chirped outside, and for a few seconds it felt like an ordinary day. I'd sit up and glance toward my bedroom window, at an open field stretching into the distance. And at the very back of that field, there was a man. He never moved. He just stood there, too far away for me to make out his face, but close enough that I knew he was staring directly at me. Even as a child inside my dream, I knew something was wrong. I felt like I shouldn't look at him, like I shouldn't have known that he was there. So I'd rush over and pull the blinds shut. The room would go dark. For a moment, everything would become completely silent. Then I'd hear footsteps. Fast, getting closer quickly. I'd stand there listening, frozen in fear for just a moment, and then I'd slowly pull one slat from the blinds, just enough to peek outside. That's when I'd realize that the man wasn't standing at the back of the field anymore. He was running, full speed, straight toward my window, his arms pumping, his body moving unnaturally fast, never slowing down, never stopping, and every time I would feel absolute panic. The window was on the second floor. There was no possible way he could reach it, but somehow I always knew, that he was coming anyway. The dream would shift after that. Sometimes my mom or dad would suddenly be standing beside me. Other times I was completely alone. Either way, I knew I had to run. I'd throw on my shoes as fast as I could, and I'd sprint out the front door without even thinking. The chase always began the same way. I would run through the apartment complex, cutting between buildings and playgrounds, trying to lose him. I knew every corner, every shortcut, every hiding place. In the dream, I would become obsessed with escaping. Each year, I would remember pieces of the previous dream and convince myself I could outsmart him this time. Maybe if I ran left instead of right. Maybe if I hid somewhere different. Maybe if I stayed with other people, maybe this time I could survive, but it never mattered. No matter where I ran, no matter which streets I took, no matter how carefully I planned my escape, I always ended up back at the apartment, standing outside, as if the entire neighborhood was trapped in some sort of endless loop. And somewhere behind me, that man was still coming. His terrifying presence never stopped chasing me. If I was alone in the dream, everything would suddenly go black before he reached me. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. But the dreams where my parents were worse. Every time one of them tried to protect me. Every time they told me to run, and every time they never made it. The dream would end before I could see exactly what happened, but I'd wake up crying. The dream eventually became something I dreaded all year long, because I knew eventually that night would come again. And when I was 11 years old, we finally moved from that apartment. It was left behind, and so was the field. Without warning, the nightmare stopped. I've never had it again. It's been years now, and I still think about the dream far more often than I'd like to admit. And I believe that something inside that apartment had been trying to reach me all those years. And after I left, the connection was lost.
Greetings from Denver, Colorado. My story is short, but I hope it gives your subscribers goosebumps, just like it does to me every time I tell it. At the time, my husband and I were living with his family in a small rancho in Aguascalientes, and we had just welcomed our newborn baby. One night, while getting ready for bed, my husband and I were laying down, scrolling on our phones, and the baby was already asleep. We suddenly heard something big and heavy land on the roof. We got really scared. Well, mostly me. Right after that, the gallinas, gallos, and the dogs started going wild. But what really terrified me was when my baby suddenly burst into loud cries, as if something had hit him. The first thing my husband and I thought, es una bruja. My suegro and suegra heard the baby crying and ran upstairs to our bedroom, which was on the second floor. When we told them what had happened, my suegro grabbed a machete and ran outside, yelling bad words at whatever it was, because in our rancho, they say cursing scares brujas away, Keep in mind, my baby wasn't baptized at the time, and I always heard that it's dangerous when babies aren't baptized, especially with brujas around. I used to brush it off until that night. The next day, one of our neighbors said something that chilled me to my core. She told us, "Our granddaughter also started crying last night. I went outside to look around, and when I looked over at your house, I saw a bruja on your roof." Daisy, when I heard that, every hair on my body stood up, and it felt like my blood was boiling. I get scared so easily, but I still can't get enough of scary stories, movies, shows, anything creepy. There's been more spooky stuff that happened to me and my husband, but those are stories for another time.
Huska Castle is a fascinating place. So mysterious. It's a 13th century castle that is on top of a cliff in what's now known as the Czech Republic. And it's really interesting because we don't really know why it was built. There are tales about how before the castle was built, there was this great big pit. They would take prisoners who were condemned, and they would say that they would be pardoned of their crimes if they consented to be lowered down into the pit by a rope and then to come back up and tell them exactly what they'd seen. And apparently the first man to do this only lasted a couple of seconds before he started screaming to please be brought back up. And when he came up only seconds later, the only details they could get out of him were that there were claws reaching for him in the darkness.
Over the years, the locals have claimed to witness strange half-human, half-winged creatures flying out of this castle, strange characters roaming the corridors of the castle, and it's claimed that under the castle there is a portal to hell.
Was Huska Castle constructed to conceal an actual portal to hell?
The only way to know for sure would be to crack open the floor of the chapel, but that might not be worth finding out the answer.
A full read on this property and the land it's on will be coming soon on Patreon. This home was built on top of a sort of portal. I will use the word portal very loosely just to explain what I'm feeling in this moment, but as we do a deeper read, it may not exactly be that. The way that it was built in a circle was purposeful. The desire when it was built was to keep the energy moving like this. Okay, so you can already feel that it's purposely wanting to pull energy from below and have it go up and out. Not sure why yet. Curious if anyone else immediately felt and saw people screaming in the windows. I know they mentioned people going down underneath and being brought underground and having an experience, but I'm seeing people screaming in the windows. So people were held captive here. People were held against their will and shouldn't have been there. There's one man in particular that oversaw all of this, that is responsible for all of this. It sounds like a King Charles. I know that's a very, there's a lot of King Charles, but that's what comes to me. I mean, to say he was drunk with power is an understatement. To say he felt and believed he could do anything he wanted was an understatement. He did do anything he wanted. He did get away with everything. He was known for beheading just people that didn't agree with him in public. He didn't hide that. This was built as a way of fulfilling desires of torture and obviously holding people for trafficking purposes, utilizing them in ways that he wants for his pleasure, himself. This is horrifying. And honestly, I don't know if I want to do a deeper dive, but we've already committed to it over on Patreon. So let's just leave it there. I think that's enough
nasty detail.
Let's watch a scary video. This videotape was found in Croatia back in 2005, and the footage shows these two teenage boys late at night in Croatia just recording each other and messing around. And at a certain point in this video, these boys notice a strange man in the distance. He appears to be walking funny, and it seems like he has something over his head, and at first the boys are amused by him and they continue to record him. But the longer that this video goes on, the creepier it starts to get.
Bravo.
Au, Isuse Bože.
Ček, to to ono opet?
To one likove piše. Kaj? Kaj?
Dobar, daj.
Kaj lik? Kaj vrak?
Nemam pojma, daj ga šutni, ja ne. Daj ga šutni.
Neću se. Mislim da je pijan, nešto.
Okej, mislim da idemo. Ajmo mi odavde, ajmo.
Fuck, Isuse Bože.
Ono da sam vidio u facu, vidio sam.
Nisam skužio, čekaj, kaj je bilo? Snimaj ga, sad ga snimaj, sad nemoj pobjeći. Kaj radi se, Bože? Kaj radi?
Ne znam. Ej, jel si ti u redu, onak?
Oprosti, jel vam treba pomoć? Peti kat.
Allegedly, the Croatian police found this footage and released it to the public, and the two boys in this video went missing. But at the same time, people also think that this is just a short horror film, being as there's no credible evidence that these boys actually went missing and that the Croatian police actually found this footage and released it to the public. Because of this sort of debate, this video remains one of the creepiest internet mysteries. As always, let me know what you think.
A series of spooky stories, Women's Intuition Part 14. I grew up having sleep paralysis every now and then, but during the short time I was with my ex, I had sleep paralysis so often that I was scared to sleep alone. We broke up and I have never experienced that much sleep paralysis since. It's been 2 years and I've only experienced it maybe 3 times total and not as scary as then. Sometimes these men are just the demons. I had a dream that my best friend was pregnant and that she was pregnant with a girl. And so I was writing a book and I wrote in the last chapter that the character based off of her was pregnant and had a daughter. They had a name that begins with the letter H. 2 months later, I get told by her that she's pregnant, and then at the gender reveal, everybody's like, oh no, because of all these symptoms, you're having a boy. The reveal showed that no, it's a girl, and when she was born, her name actually started with an H. In 2013, I was on a vacation in Turkey. On the way back, my flight was delayed by about 3 hours, so I was happy that I could stay a little bit longer, especially since the weather for the rest of the week had been bad. Just as I was about to call a taxi and head back, an announcement was made that a plane had landed. I was disappointed, but I accepted it. 5 days later, I had a dream about an earthquake. Everything was collapsing. In the dream, I was in my house in Turkey, and everyone died. When I woke up, it was 2:17. I had a strange feeling, but I went back to sleep. The next morning, my mother came into my room and told me that there had been an earthquake in Turkey. 7 cities had been devastated. What makes it strange is that the earthquake occurred at 4:17. What makes it even stranger is that the earthquake occurred at 4:17 local time. Because there was a 2-hour time difference at that time of year, I woke up at exactly the moment the earthquake struck. Even stranger, my cousin and her family were living in that house at the time because it felt so quiet. Without me there, they decided to visit my aunt because they missed me. If they had not gone, they probably would not have survived, nor would I. 2 days after finding out that I was pregnant, I had a dream in black and white, and in my dream, I was given a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. Months later, I found out that I was having a boy. I was about to move in with my boyfriend of 3 years. I just kept feeling something was off. I just legit said into the universe, if there is any reason I shouldn't move in and move forward with this man, give me a sign. That evening, I got a hey girl text. He was living a double life and had a side chick. Not me, my mom. When I was in 3rd grade, my younger brother and I went to the same school in New York. One particular morning, we were running late, so when we got out the front door of the school, my mom asked me if I would walk my brother to his classroom. She usually did it every morning. I started to take his hand, but she stopped me and said, never mind, I'll do it. She walked him to his classroom and then left to catch the subway at her job. She came out of the subway at her stop just in time to watch the plane hit the Twin Tower that she worked in. Miraculously, all of her coworker friends were either out of town or had uncanny things happen that they also never made it into the building that morning. That also feels like a burnt toast theory situation. That is absolutely terrifying. I'm a house cleaner and regularly get sent to vacant homes to clean before it's rented/sold. got sent to a vacancy in South City in St. Louis. I'm an anxious person normally, but that morning I was extra creeped out. When I got into the home, I tried, but I couldn't find the lockbox. I even went around to the back door to find it, but no luck. As I'm coming back around the side of the building back to my car out front, a man stops walking up the sidewalk to let me walk ahead of him. At first I think it's 10 a.m. He's probably just going to work, but I start speed walking. Thank God my friend had come up with me to help and was waiting for me, and we both jump in the car, where she tells me that man behind me had kept walking past us when he saw her, but while she was waiting outside the car for me, she had seen another man walking towards her from another direction. What's more scary is the men working on the roof across the street had all stopped to watch him approach her. The second man didn't stop until a male stepped out onto his porch directly across from my car. At that point, he did a full 180 and walked back the way he came. I called my boss and peeled out of there. One time I was 13 and it was New Year's Eve. Me and my 2 other friends wanted to go to the park at like 1 a.m. just to hang out. We left her house and started walking, and halfway there I told them something wasn't right and insisted that we go home. We went home, and not even an hour later a girl got kidnapped from the same park. Was she okay? My 2 daughters were going to spend the night at a friend's house across town and go to church with me in the AM for Mother's Day. I told my younger daughter to take her dad's car. She wanted to take her big truck. We fought. I didn't know why, but my gut kept telling me that she needed to take her dad's car. The next morning they called me to say Happy Mother's Day, and they were on their way home. 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was my older daughter screaming because they had been T-boned. The phone dialed the last number that she called. If they would have been in her truck, the impact would have made them roll. They were on a hill, and the entire fire department told me that the car's safety features kept them alive. Said it before and I'll say it again. A woman's intuition is one thing, but a mother's intuition is a whole nother beast. Not sure if my story counts, but I got engaged in 2023 and wore my ring every single day since then. I only took it off when necessary. Showers, washing dishes, etc. On 9/10/25, I woke up an hour late for work and my ring had slipped off my finger sometime before waking up. I couldn't find it. I was searching for it between the sheets. A bit over an hour later, I got a call from my fiance's sister. He had passed away. Weeks later, I found out that he passed away around the same time that I woke up and was looking for my ring. That is so sad. I'm sorry for your loss. Come back for part 16.
Y'all gonna hear this story about this girl that has this friend, and the friend wants to talk to the dead, and she continuously practices it. She said that she never told anybody this story before because she feels crazy for saying it out loud. She also mentions that this story time happened a couple years ago when she was in college. She mentioned that she isn't too old, but she's not really that young, so just keep that in mind. The girl proceeds to say that she and this girl are not best friends, but like I would think you would call them like an associate to one another because they had multiple classes with each other, just not every single class. They didn't always chill with each other. The most they seen each other was when they were in class and when they lived off campus in like this general area. They lived in the same area basically. She also mentions that the girl's personality and vibe is like way different from hers, but not in a bad way. She said the girl likes old stuff, like old cemeteries, old abandoned places. She loves spiritual things, like dealing with the dead. She has like a very dark aura, but like nothing that she felt like she needed to be on high security of. She said that this girl always had like a weird theory that she would say out loud about the dead can hear you if you're in the right place at the right time, and she would constantly, like frequently say things like that. She said that the girl was like not really unknown, but like she didn't have a lot of friends, not a lot of family that she kept in contact with. She barely even had social media, and she had like little other associates, but like they were never really like a friend group. It was probably just like a hi and bye, or like they had the same interest in things but never further talked on it. She kind of felt bad for the girl, so she ended up being her friend, because if she would have seen that the girl had friends and family, she probably wouldn't have been in the same category or even chilling with this girl. So now the girl goes on to say that like her and this girl that she is associates with constantly go to the cemetery, I would assume at nighttime, because the girl will bring candles and like fake offerings and like basically test the waters with the spirits. They would laugh at little memes and stuff that were on the headstones at the cemeteries, and they would just like have a good time. She said that being with this girl and doing these type of activities felt more stupid and goofy than a red flag that she should be worried about. She said the only reason that she would go with this girl is because she was bored. She had nothing else to do, no other friends really, so she was just like, why not? Now, this girl was so fascinated with death that, like, dang near every conversation they had was about death and spirits and stuff like that. She brings up one time that this girl literally said, like, she wants proof of the dead for some reason, and she goes on to mention that, like, everybody is around spirits all the time. They're always around the dead. It's just nobody has the proof to really, like, realize and acknowledge the fact that they're around this type of stuff. So she wanted to come up with an idea or whatever to figure out how to have her proof. I guess that made her feel comfortable in some type of way. Y'all know she was obsessed with that type of stuff. Now, the friend of the girl or the associate of the girl basically told her, like, you need to cut it out because you starting to take it too serious, and I don't want to be getting haunted by whatever you're trying to contact. So now fast forward to one night. It was a night in October. Her and this girl, I guess, agreed to go to a cemetery at nighttime. And when they got there, it was a small cemetery. Nothing too big, nothing too small. There was trees all around it. There was no buildings or houses around. So they were basically, like, flat out in the middle of nowhere with a whole bunch of spirits. They did visit this place one time before, but it was during the daytime. And now that they're there at nighttime, the whole vibe and the aesthetic of it feels very creepy, very, I should not be here. And she was like, yeah, no, I have a gut feeling, I'm gonna follow it. But she goes on to say that she should have trusted the gut feeling and left, but she didn't. Like I said before, the friend likes to bring things to these cemeteries, and at this time she brought something that gave a vibe and kind of looked like a Ouija board, but it was not a Ouija board. And she brought candles, and the girl that, you know, is telling the story is like, I'm not helping you with none of that. I came for you, but, like, I'm not being involved in anything that you're about to do. The girl was basically like, okay, that's fine, you don't have to. So she started setting up in this area where it was like headstones around, but it was like one big tree that she set up right in front of. So at first, the friend sits down. She starts asking little questions, you know, pausing to see if she hears or sees anything, asking another question. And when she doesn't get any responses, she starts getting irritated. And you already know when somebody starts getting irritated when they're not getting something they want from the spiritual realm, they're gonna fuck around and find out. But the girl that's telling the story is already irritated because she didn't even want to be there anymore. The floor was pretty damp, and she was just like, the vibe is not it, and you're just like pissing me off. But while the friend is sitting here watching the friend by the tree do what she's doing, right, the friend starts acting weird, like acting so weird. Out of nowhere, she just blank face, no questions, not moving, just standing there, staying still. The girl's standing behind her, but she got the flashlight on her phone pointed at her. She's just looking at her like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? Like, she already knew something was about to go down. So as she's looking at the girl, she's basically telling her, like, all right, it's not funny, you could stop trying to scare me. And the girl's still not answering her, like, still not answering her. And she just keeps going, like, it's not funny, you could stop, like, because I'm ready to go, and you're over here playing. The girl starts breathing in and out slow and heavy, like if she just finished running and is really trying to catch her breath before she has an asthma attack or something. Like, she is breathing so slow, like she's inhaling something. The girl ends up walking up to the friend, just a few steps forward. And she couldn't even get too close to her because the girl ended up talking, and it honestly wasn't even her talking. She was talking, she said, don't get too close, don't stand right there. But it was not in her voice. It was deep, it was slow. It did not sound like a female. The girl ends up backing up, and she starts laughing as she's backing up, because she's like, is she dead playing with me, or like, should I be really concerned? So while she's laughing, the friend does something that makes her instantly stop. The friend slowly picks up her head and looks at the girl. Now, when she looks at the girl, she says that, like, her face was not even her face. Like, the same person she came with is not even the same person that she might leave with or that she's looking at right now. Like, she said it just felt wrong and she had a really, really, really bad gut feeling. She said that the girl opened her mouth, and when she opened her mouth, she opened it wide and slow, and it looked like it was stretching, like it was like some type of AI thing. Like, it did not look like a human's mouth can open that wide. As well as her eyes were opening very, very slow and very, very wide, and it was like she was trying to focus on who she was looking at, which is the girl telling the story, but for some reason she couldn't. Make sure you guys follow me and check out my page for part 2.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
So this is part 2 for the friends that went to a cemetery and the one girl was never seen again. Like I was saying, the friend's mouth is opening slow, right? And opening so wide, it didn't look human. The eyes of the girl was also opening wide, and she was trying to focus on who she was looking at, but for some reason, she just couldn't. Now, the girl that is telling this story is walking back even more, because the first time she walked back, but now she's really, really walking back, because, like, what the fuck am I looking at? She starts calling her name. Now, this part I'm about to tell you guys sounds like a possession to me, personally. But after the friend ends up calling her name, she said the girl gets up. The girl gets up, but she does not remember seeing the girl pull herself up or stretch to get up. She just remembers blinking. 1 minute she was down, the next minute she was up. She turns to her and starts walking to her. Right? Just walking slowly to her. And while she's walking to her, she has her head tilted a little bit like this. Eyes wide open, mouth wide open. And she's mumbling something under her breath. But it sounds like it's coming from right here. It don't sound like it's coming from right here. And like I said before, it does not sound like the friend. It doesn't sound like the girl that, you know, she came with. So as the friend is coming towards her, she's telling her, like, what are you doing? And she keeps calling her name. When she calls her name again, the girl says something. And like I said, different voice. Not this person. But basically she said, you brought me one. The girl instantly snapped after that and started running towards the girl. So now they're both running, but one girl's running away from the other girl, as you can imagine. And she's scared shitless because she's in the middle of nowhere in a cemetery that she did not want to be in. She's just thinking, like, I should have followed my gut feeling. And you know when you're running from somebody and you're laughing? That's not exactly what happened to the girl that was running away from the other one. But the one that was chasing that girl was laughing. She was laughing in like an evil way. Like a weird, scary, evil laugh. But while she's laughing, she's like coughing or choking or something. And then when she was done coughing, she would laugh again. And she said, like, it sounded like it hurt. So it's like, why are you laughing? Now, of course, while she's running, she gets in the car. But as she's getting in the car, she fumbles her keys. So she instantly thought, like, I'm about to die. Like, it's about to be over. I don't know if she got the keys or not, but I know that once she got in the car, she closed it and she locked it. The friend is right outside of the window, just staring at her with a blank face. And then she slowly moved down to get, like, on the level of her through the window, smiles, and turns her head. But, like, in a creepy way. Like, just imagine that. Imagine your friend doing that to you. She said that her mouth looked too big. Like I keep saying, like, her mouth was so wide open. Like, that image of her friend smiling with her eyes and her mouth wide open is like an image that continuously is in her head that she has nightmares about, and she literally can't get that vision out of her fucking head. So she instantly puts the car in reverse, trying to get out of the cemetery. She stumbles across like a whole bunch of rocks, but she was like, I don't even care. So she turns the wheel and hurries up and gets up out of there. She left the friend. So once she gets out of there, she's not even thinking about calling the police or anything. Even though now she's thinking she should have did that. At that time, she was young. She was scared. She didn't call the police. She just knew I needed to get out of there or else I was going to be dead. She drives back to campus and she gets at like a nearby food market or whatever, and she's staying in the parking lot for like a little over an hour, I think she said, just thinking and replaying the images that she has of the friend in her brain. The whole night she ends up staying up. She's thinking that her friend is gonna call her or text her. She didn't bother to call or text the girl first, and the girl didn't. Now the next day goes by, still no call, no text from the friend. Now, you know, days are going by, and this girl is starting to ask people from the school campus and stuff like that, like, have you seen so and so, have you heard from her? And everybody's basically saying like they don't know her, or they just thought like she dropped out, like she wasn't really important. Nobody wanted to know her whereabouts. Now there were rumors going around, like I said, some people were saying that she dropped out of college, and then there was another rumor going around saying that the girl moved, but obviously none of that was true. Years passed, right? She's no longer in college. She's still searching for the girl through like social media, but she's not seeing any social media posts, pages about the girl. She basically never heard from her again, never heard about her. But like we said before, the girl didn't really have a lot of friends, a lot of family that she kept in contact with, and she didn't really like be open to anybody but this girl. She always kind of felt guilty for not going back and not calling the cops, but she did realize like this was a lesson that I need to learn, not to fuck with this type of stuff. And as I said before, the image of the girl standing in front of her car with her mouth wide open and her eyes and her head tilted is the image that she keeps seeing of the girl, which is terrifying. Why would that not be terrifying? Especially if you've never seen the person again. But that's it for today's spooky scary stories. If you guys want to hear more from me, make sure you follow and comment your opinion about this story.
Boo Boo said, "Hello Marion, my name is Eve. How are you feeling today?" She said, "You must be very brave." I said, "Well, Marion, so are you. You're a very, very brave little girl." She said, "No, I'm not." I asked, "Why do you say that?" She said, "Because it's a fact." I said, "Can you explain why you feel that way?" She said, "You know why." I really don't, Marion. She said, "Well, you're brave, so you wouldn't know." Does this have something to do with your father? Where is he? Where's Papa? I just said that he's talking to some very important people right now. She said, "Why?" And I said, "Because we need to understand what happened to you. I'm just not brave is all." Did your father say that? And she said, "Yes, it's because I cry when I hurt myself." We all do that sometimes, Marion. She asked, "Do you?" I said, "Yes, all the time. It's a natural reaction to pain, you know? Sometimes we just can't help it." "But you're whole. Did no one see you do it?" What do you mean?" She said, "Don't they take the boo-boo away?" Is that what your father did? Is that why? She said, "My papa would always take the boo-boo away when I wasn't brave. So he would... When I hurt my finger, he took my finger away." "Marion, when I hurt my foot, he took my foot away." Jeez, that's... When I hurt my eye, he took my eye away. I didn't. That's what happens when you're not brave, my papa says. If you're not brave, he'll take the boo-boo away so you can never have it again. I'm so sorry. She said, "It's not so bad. At least I'm not like my brother Jason." What happened to Jason? He hurt his face.
So we are at the Donkey Lady Bridge here in San Antonio, Texas. Let's see if we get any activity. So legend says that many years ago, a woman and her husband lived down in there by the water, and unfortunately he cheated on her. So she went crazy and drowned her children. In this water, I don't know if you can hear it. As always, if you say her name 3 times, they say that she will appear, but I'm not trying that today. We're literally in the middle of nowhere. There's no one around us. No cars. It is pitch black. I'm going to turn off my light so you can see how dark it is. No cuts. Legit dark as hell. This is a little flashlight that we got. And it's super dark. Can y'all hear the water? So we live in San Antonio, Texas, and there is a lot of folklore, and honestly, the Donkey Lady Bridge is one of the most popular ones. There's a friend that came many years ago with her boyfriend, and she says that they had parked their car and he got off by himself. She didn't want to get off because she was scared, and he heard something in the woods, rustling in the woods, so he ran back into the car to start the car to take off because he was scared, and the car did not turn on. It is a very dangerous area because it is so dark and so secluded. People do come over here to this side to do bad things, illegal things. So it is very important to be careful, make sure that your surroundings are safe. But it is said to be very haunted. It is 11:46 p.m. and my husband and I are here alone. There's literally no one else here.
I have some creepy pictures to show you. This first photo was captured by a girl who was taking some back-to-back selfies. Later on, she was going through these photos and deleting the ones that she didn't like. And in the process of doing this, she noticed something unexplainable and terrifying in one of the photos that she took. The poster of the second photo says that their uncle has a trail camera set up outside of their grandparents' old house. Nobody lives in that house anymore, and it actually sits abandoned. And this trail camera will take 3 consecutive photos anytime that it senses movement. And in one of these 3 photos, this is captured.